I'm very proud of the Jewish community of Baltimore. I'm very proud of the way that you choose to commemorate and celebrate important events. Israel's 62nd birthday. And the Jewish community has chosen to devote time to talk about the Iranian threat of a nuclear Middle East. It's a very appropriate subject for us to talk about on Israel's 62nd birthday. But as we all know, there hasn't been a single year that Israel hasn't been under threat from hostile neighbors, their militaries, terrorists. There hasn't been a single year that Israel has not been threatened and acted upon by economic boycott. There hasn't been a single year where Israel has not been unfairly isolated through diplomacy of other countries. And now we have the threat of a nuclear Iran. We will always make sure that Israel is protected, that Israel has the tools it needs to defend itself, whether it's military or whether it's diplomatic. That's the relationship that we are committed to maintain between the United States and Israel. But we need to know the facts. We need to know the facts. And that's why we thank the panel for being here this evening.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm really happy to share this evening with you. I know that this is going to be an informative and an interesting evening with what we know will be a serious discussion about the greatest threat not only facing Israel but the world, a nuclear Iran.
How close is Iran to a nuclear weapon? The answer is we don't know. They've been at it for 20 years, and we've had tremendous successes in delaying their program. It's a matter of public record that there have been defectors in that program and that some of the equipment in the program has been sabotaged. And the designs that the Iranians are using are bad, and they've had to continually reinvent the wheel. It's also, however, the case that, the Iranians have developed a lot of very dangerous knowledge. I like to say that the question is, can they put that into effect? It's kind of like me, after 10 years of tennis lessons, I know what it would take to win at Wimbledon, but that doesn't mean that Federer is quaking in his boots. I can't do it. And so far, at least, they haven't been able to do it. However, they have been able to do it with missiles, and done a very good job with missiles. And so that worries us that perhaps they will at some point be able to get it together more about their nuclear program, and they are been making progress, and we just don't know. We don't know how close they are. That's one topic. The other topic I get asked a lot about is, well, why would the Iranians ever use a nuclear weapon against Israel? My gosh, don't they know, as Secretary of State Clinton said, that if they did that, then the United States, much less Israel, would, in her words, would obliterate Iran. And when people say that to me, I recommend that they crack open a very good book by Barbara Tuchman called The Guns of August, in which she describes how World War I started. And she talks about how when the Archduke was killed, the one thing absolutely everybody agreed was that they didn't want to start a general European war about this. But then as the crisis unfolded, things happened with a dynamic of their own. If I remind you, in 1967, how did we get to the June War? We had the Arab states in the spring of 1967 making all kinds of loud propaganda about how they were going to divert the headwaters of the Jordan River and Israel would have no water. And then the Syrians actually started to do something about this, and the Israelis struck the Syrians. The Syrians had to prove their manhood, and so therefore there were these big artillery exchanges and fighter plane dogfights. Then the Syrians said to the Egyptians, well, what are you doing? You claim to be a revolutionary leader, what are you doing? And so Nasser moves his troops into the Sinai, and the Israelis move some of their troops forward, and then Nasser asked the UN observers to leave, and then Nasser has to block the Straits of Tehran to prove he can do it, so ships can't go to Eilat. In other words, this crisis unfolded in a dynamic that nobody expected, and nobody wanted. And that's the kind of thing that worries me with regard to the Iranian regime. These guys have shown us in that flawed June election, which they mismanaged in a spectacular way, that managed to create this wave of protests that temporarily threatened their very regime. That was not in their interests. And they did it because they are arrogant, risk-takers, who are profoundly ignorant about their own country and about the world. And it's not good. These are the issues that worry me. They're not necessarily the issues that worry world leaders. If you think that the reason that the country that's been toughest about Iran's nuclear program for the last 8 years is, well, the country that has been toughest about Iran's nuclear program for the last 8 years has been France. If you think that the French are doing that out of love of Israel, you're entitled to be wrong. They are doing that because they care about proliferation. And we now have a president of the United States for whom that is the #1 issue. May I point out that when Obama chaired a meeting of the Security Council for the first time ever at the level of heads of government, he decided to pass a resolution there about nuclear proliferation, which nobody cared about, instead of passing a resolution about global warming when Copenhagen summit was going to be in 3 weeks. Obama gets one chance to bring 45 heads of government to Washington for a summit, and he does it about nuclear safety. He talked to people in the Obama team. This is one of the few issues on which the president gets really, a few foreign policy issues on which the president gets really engaged. This is what he cares about. And if you want to move on the Iran nuclear issue, don't talk about Israel. Talk about proliferation.
Why would Iran attack Israel with nuclear weapons, knowing that it would be destroyed in return? I mean, after all, I think just about everyone in this room lived through the Cold War, when both we and the Soviet Union had thousands of nuclear weapons, but neither one of us attacked the other, because we both recognized that such an attack would be suicidal. And that may also work with Iran. Deterrence may work. And by deterrence, I mean simply persuading someone not to do something they are capable of doing by threatening them with unacceptable punishment if they do it. So one would think that threatening Iran with unacceptable punishment, essentially saying to them, hey, you blow up Israel, you're going to get blown up in return, would be enough to dissuade them from attacking Israel. The problem is we're not sure. I mean, Iran has members of its government who are religious fanatics, who may believe that the destruction of Israel is in itself a worthy goal, even if it means their own death. If the destruction of Israel brings forth an Islamic caliphate, if it produces a situation where everyone who dies in return goes straight to heaven, then deterrence goes out the window. So if such a fanatical leadership has their finger on the nuclear trigger, and they might, deterrence will not work and Israel will be destroyed. A second way that Iran may launch a nuclear attack on Israel is that they may believe they can disarm Israel's own nuclear weapons. Although Israel is not a declared nuclear weapon state, virtually everyone acknowledges that Israel has nuclear weapons. It has them on submarines, on missiles, on aircraft. But the Iranians may believe or may convince themselves that by launching a first strike, they can disarm the Israeli nuclear weapons and then perhaps with sophisticated anti-aircraft weaponry shoot down Israel's cruise missiles and aircraft, thus preventing an Israeli retaliation or a major retaliation. So especially in time of crisis, such as what occurred in 1914, one can see how the Iranian leadership can convince themselves that going first will result in a military victory. If Iran feels it's undergoing a domestic upheaval and the government is about to be overthrown, and we've certainly seen evidence of that, they may well calculate, hey, we're going to be out of power anyway, let's go out with a true bang, let's destroy those lousy Jews in Israel so we can at least go down in history as having achieved this tremendous development. And so even if Israel has assured retaliation, again, if you are going to be overthrown anyway, desperate times call for desperate measures, and I could certainly see elements of the Revolutionary Guard behaving in a way that would result in a nuclear attack on the Jewish state.